Good evening to everybody, Maj and my comrade at arms, Dr. Miguna. Look, fellow Kenyans, we are at the most dangerous time we have ever been, I think, since the construction of the Kenyan Republic. I say the Kenyan Republic because the more dangerous times, comparable ones, were during the fight for our independence from the colonial powers in order to transform Kenya into a self-governing state. So dangerous is the situation because I am seeing a series of activities that can be summarized not just as dictatorship, but a methodical, systematic degrading of our multi-party democracy. I mean, we've already talked from the beginning, since the disputed election, that the first thing to discredit was the commission, electoral commission itself, that it was, said to be split. But soon after that election, it was buried. As we speak today, nobody in the political class, including the opposition or the government, is talking about the IBUC. We are in a situation where there is a conspiracy between the opposition and the government. William Ruto began to systematically buy the opposition MPs. But I think I see something which is even more worrisome. The opposition MPs are seeking William Ruto. It is no longer a one-way relationship. This is a two-way traffic. The greed of the political class, the excesses of the greed of the political class in Kenya is beyond historical comparisons. Yes, you go to elections, you elect MPs, they vote themselves the biggest salaries and the biggest benefits. When they leave office, they give themselves pensions and health care for life. They have voted within parliament that if you elect a party to government or a party to opposition, they are entitled to the political party's fund. Therefore, even after elections, the public continue to fund their political parties. Many of those political parties are individual enterprises, like in the case of ODM, like in the case of several other smaller parties. One would argue in Kenyan politics from the time of DP, from the time of, I think, Foda, Silly, and so forth, that so many of these parties were always individualized. So that even what you call the political parties fund becomes the piggy bag of the so-called owners of these parties, again funded by the public. And then all of a sudden, you've seen the other day, Parliament within 24 hours can come together in unison, government, opposition, and everything in between. And within 24 hours can pass a motion and a bill with 2/3 in their interest or in whatever the agenda they want to pass. Without where we are in Kenya today, we elected a government and an opposition that is non-existent. The Kenyan people, under the political parties political act of 2021, were given the position before elections to look at parties. Those parties went out and formed coalitions. In the case of the Kenya Kwanza, they formed coalitions of parties and offered their manifesto and offered their candidatures to the country. In the case of Azimio, they formed a constituent party. The law requires that both the two competitors deposit with the registrar of political parties the documents containing their ideology, manifesto, and the order in which they will govern themselves, so that if in case of any disputes, the public would be able to know that there's been a violation of those agreements and that the courts will be participatory in the solving of those problems. So look at these Kenyans, why we are in real crisis. You are given William Ruto and his running mate, Gachagua. On the other hand, you are given Raila and Martha Karua. And today, none of whom you voted for is together. You are looking at a situation where William Ruto has undone the popular will of all the people and members of Kenya Kwanza who voted in a team as presented by Ruto to the public. Raila Odinga has fallen out with the principals or the people who put together a coalition in Azimio, and they put themselves to the public. And the people who voted Azimio and the people who voted Kenya Kwanza have all been defrauded. They have been delegitimized. In other words, the mandate that these people are using to govern or to participate in opposition and whatever conspiracies they are building are illegitimate. They are null and void ab initio. They do not reflect the will of the people as voted in the general election of 2022. And therefore, what are you doing? You're dealing with an illegal, illegitimate government, illegal, illegitimate structure of opposition and government, illegal, illegitimate government of national unity. You're dealing with a government that does not obey court orders. You're dealing with a government which is beginning to infiltrate the judiciary. You are looking at a situation where they pay themselves allowances, where they pay themselves huge amounts in the political parties bill to reward their parties so that small parties emerging from the public can never emerge because only those who claim they were voted by us are taking money on our basis and yet they don't reflect us. And they are showing you that they can take 2/3 of parliament and do whatever they want with it. So I want to raise this alarm to this nation at this time, at this moment, that let it be said that some of us began to say very early on that we must, first of all, say that the multi-party state, as described in Chapter 4 of the 2010 Constitution, that there will be a government and that there will be an opposition in order that Kenya is a multi-party state guaranteed by the Bill of Rights, has now no longer continued to exist and does not exist at all. And one of the reasons that I'm in court next Thursday on the 17th of October, leading a constitutional petition against the sale of Jomo Kenyatta Airport is because the government and the opposition and parliament and all the persons we have delegated our authority to are taking that authority to waste our society and our property and our assets without getting to the propriety of the case. How do you take an asset that belongs to the public, but is also a profitable asset, so that you take it at no reason whatsoever, give it to without any public participation, public scrutiny, and continue a plan and a system of raping the public? So you rape the public on elections. You rape them by paying yourselves, including giving yourselves pensions, taking from the political party's fund. Then you take their assets of Kenya and you say that you're privatizing them. And then you go to the streets and you order the army and deploy them. Then you take guns and bullets and shoot our children. And then you leave them to be buried and rot as dogs. And then you wake up every Sunday and go to church. And the man you used to go to church with, Gachagua, you impeach him in 24 hours. Like as though that was like killing a mosquito on a bed. If they can do that to Gachagua, what can they do to you? This is a state of an emergency. And I'm calling upon all Kenyans, particularly those who say that they are the Gen Z and whatever. This is a time for all hands on deck. I do not want to hear, I have no longer any appetite to hear, oh, this is our favorite person, or this person has done this, or we don't want that person. The reason you're continuing to be used this way is because of this attitude of arrogance that must stop. Until we stop being arrogant against ourselves, they are going to continue to step on us. We must unify. We must bring in the experience of yesterday with the vigorous anticipation of youth. We must be able to recreate a coalition of the willing. We must be able to bring all Kenyans together in a manner that will surprise them. We look back in our history and you will find that within our history, there were men and women who stood beyond their time, sacrificed beyond their call of duty, whether it be Kenneth Matiba or Wangari Maathai or Degama Pinto or Tom Mboya or Robert Ouko. There were so many, and there can be so many others who can join within the current and the energetic in order that what is created is an alternative universe from the universe that is being created by our looters and by our detractors who are captured power in 2022 illegitimately because they are governing by a fraud. What was cast in votes is not what is in government or opposition altogether. It is therefore true to say that the entire government of Kenya, the entire opposition structure, including parliament, senate, they are all illegal, they are all illegitimate and do not have the mandate of the Kenyan people. And therefore, if somebody was to ask me, how are we going to go forward from here? And during the 90s, there was a time we decided not to appeal to the government. We decided to appeal to lawyers. Then Paul Mwite was the chairman of the Law Society. And there was a time all lawyers began to boycott the going to court on any matter, whether it be constitutional, be it corporate law, until certain things were done. We must have a kind of a national boycott of our judiciary system until such a time the IBC is put in place, because without it, without the IBC, all these lamentations that people are talking about, be they an idea of referendum, an idea of recalling MPs, an idea, anything electoral is null and void, can never take off without an independent electoral boundaries commission. And it is possible to call about other institutions that are not in the control of government. That is why when doctors go to the streets and strike, and the hospitals are shut, and when the teachers go to the streets and strike, and the schools are shut, the government, with all its arrogance, with all these things they have put on their one side, are forced to come back and kneel before the people, because that's the language they understand, the language of defiance and the language of saying no. If we can get the lawyers, if we can talk to them, and obviously right now their lawyers are also split, because there are those since the government of national unity who have abandoned us. I still believe that we can get a large number of people to disrupt the entire legal system, because until you disrupt the legal system, you cannot get an IBC. You're not going to get it from parliament. We must find a way in which we hold the government by the neck. We must be able to make sure there is no oxygen in the system of government. And they cannot govern without a legal system. They cannot govern without doctors or teachers. And since those are not the places we need to fight for IBC, mine is to try and see if we can build any kind of consensus around courts and the legal process of boycott as a tool of energizing and bringing, judges and the High Court and Kenyan people into looking at the IBC question. Now, moving from that point, I also want to say that William Ruto's impeachment motion meant very little to me. I really don't give a damn if he removes Gachagua or he does not. But it sent shockwaves to me that this can be the template of extending his rule in parliament. By extending his rule of MPs, he can go and say, look, now we want a 7-year term. We can be able to come back without any inhibition and use the Museveni Kagame playbook of ripping the constitution and in making sure that the 2010 constitution becomes the Ruto constitution of 2024, 2025. And therefore, my question is not a question, actually. It's a call of action. The call of action that we must do to ensure that this does not happen is to take advantage, because the enemy of your enemy is my friend. Right now, the country, and yesterday, opinion polls are showing that 76 to 80% of the country is anti the Ruto government, anti the Ruto coalition. In fact, it has swallowed Ruto, it has swallowed ODM, it has swallowed all the enablers of that government. And the public jointly, nearly 80% is anti this government. And that being the case, it means that the public mood, the public displeasure can be used and can be mobilized into a resistance. And that resistance on the streets can aid the resistance in the courts. And because there is despondency, some of the people who are very angry with this government are angry for selfish reasons. But for me, it does not matter why they are angry. What matters is that there is a lot of anger out there. We must be strategic. We must be definite. We must be conniving. We must also act like the thief is acting. You must set a thief to catch a thief. We cannot go there with a Bible and wearing the bishop's cloak when the man is wearing a gun and a machete in his back every night against the Kenyan people. We must redefine ourselves. We must begin to collaborate and bring together even people we never thought were allies. Because unless we do that, my friends, ladies and gentlemen, where we are in the middle of 2024, God forbid where we will be in the middle of 2025, unless we as a people rise up. Finally, on the Adani question, I want to give this undertaking that I think because people have been confused about the two processes in court. One was a judicial review by the LSK, and mine is a constitutional application which seeks to nullify the matter completely. I believe that from the 17th, the High Court will have merged the two matters suo motu, and that this matter of the JKIA will be one of the first times we can draw blood from the veins of William Ruto. A very thorough process has been put in place. I'm limited by the rules of the courts, what I may say or not say, but I want to learn for now by saying, Kenyans, we are in the most dangerous time we have ever been since the establishment of the Kenyan Republic in 1964.
Asante sana kwa kutazama Wasos TV. Huyo amekuwa ni Tony Gachoka. Kama ulivyomsikiza akizungumza tu yale ambayo yanakumba wananchi wa Kenya, jinsi revolution inafaa kufanyika nchini, na ameweza kuzungumzia mambo mengi kuhusiana na DP Gachagua, Rais William Samoei Ruto, Raila Odinga na wabunge na hao wote ambao umeweza kuyasikia hapo. Sasa sijui una maoni gani kuhusiana na alichosema Tony Gachoka? Kama uko na maoni niachie hapo kwenye comment section. Kama subscribe na kuomba uweze kusubscribe kwenye Wasos TV, au sio? So nakutakia mchana mwema. Kama hujasubscribe mara nyingine tena, na kuomba uweze kusubscribe ndani ya Wasos TV, au sio mtu wangu? So nakutakia mchana mwema, na kama umesubscribe na kuomba uweze kufinya notification bell, ndio wakati wote tunapata habari kama hii unakuwa wa kwanza kuipata. Unaweza share, like na kuacha comment yako hapo. Hadi wakati mwingine, nakutakia mchana mwema. Mimi niite Manoti. Asante sana.